That's kind of warm. Hey, how about we just turn on the air?
Well, yeah, that's right. Keeping your garage workspace comfortable. That is what we're going to go over today. Uh, I'm going to give what I've learned over the years through trial and error, lots of reading, to help make sure that, hey, maybe someone else out there can be able to work in the middle of summer or the middle of winter and be comfortable in their garage, maybe get their project done. Uh, Keeping your garage comfortable is a massive challenge. Garages were never meant to be climate controlled in a residential house. That's just not the way they were. They just weren't made to do that. They were made just basically to store your stuff and keep it dry. To do this, there's many steps you have to take. There's four steps, main steps that I believe and that I've done. Now, you can tell me along the way with comments below, hey, I've done this or this, I've seen this. That's awesome because that's what this is all about. I'm just going to depart unto you what I've learned just by stupid trial and error. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need to do when you're going to be climate controlling your garage, now I'm going to be mainly talking about cooling because I'm in Florida and it's, well, brutally hot most of the time. But you could use the same kind of concept for up north where you have winter, which gets very cold and it's unpleasant, where you could then go and do this. My main focus is going to be basically anything, below the Mason-Dixon line is going to be very similar to what I'm talking about. Out west, those states out there, like the high desert, where it's a little more arid, there's a different setup, and I'll talk about that at the end. And then you have your upper Midwest and your Northeast, which the Northeast is more about humidity, and the upper Midwest is about winter, honestly. So, if you don't live in the United States, well, you can kind of figure out where you are on that whole scheme of climate. All right, so the first thing you have to do is assess your space, which I had to do. All right, so let's take a look at this. I have no windows. I have a double-sized door. I have no windows, no door over on that side. That's the outside wall. That's the door into the house. Okay. And then, of course, I have my AC unit squarely in the middle of my garage, which made it so I couldn't put a lift in here. Honestly, that literally is the one thing that stopped me from doing it. It's right there. So now the other thing I have to look at is my building is made of block. It's insulated in the ceiling, but it is not insulated in the walls. It's kind of insulated, but it's not insulated like the inside of the house insulated. There's some insulation, it's just not a lot. And honestly, if I had known many years ago when I first moved in, I would have actually put board insulation over the block to help keep it a little cooler. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so now that we know what we have, now we have to plan out what we're going to do. Now, the first thing is insulation. Being that I really can't do much with the walls, the ceiling's already done. My big problem is the garage door. Now, on the garage door, I went and I used the pink stuff. Good old fiberglass. It's great. You don't have to have it completely touching the door to make it work, unlike that reflective stuff. The reflective stuff is reflective, and it needs to be tight against the door. Otherwise, it won't reflect, and you'll not get the greatest amount of cooling or insulation, I guess. This is R8. I'll show a picture of it, which is bare minimum. The other stuff, a lot of them don't say what their R rating is. And that's a big deal. You really need to have this. This door was $100 and between 110 and 120 in the summertime with the sun pounding on it. Now it's the temperature of the room. That is a huge difference. Now, when you do the door, it's not just these panels, okay? Up on top here, there's a giant gap. And I'll show a picture of the stuff I bought. This is a rubber seal that I put on there. Now, that rubber seal has two features, though. It keeps air from coming in, and also will keep anybody from trying to break into your garage and pull the little cord, because you can't move that. As you see, it's screwed down. That's not going anywhere. Also with the door is they sell hinges that help push it forward. They have spring-loaded. I'll show a picture of them above. So they're spring-loaded, but I didn't want to spend the money on it. It's like $100-something. So I just double gasketed the outside, so you can't see you can't really see light. And that helps a lot. There's no air getting blown in this way. Now, and of course in Florida, this is something, if you don't live in a hurricane zone, we have these extra, these are 35 pounds a piece. So this door now weighs way over 400 pounds. And of course, make sure you talk to your local garage guy. He'll have to go up on your springs and set you up. Because, yeah, that door is really, really heavy now. But, you know, so you pay a price for actually having it being able to keep heat out. That's a big thing. And that was half the battle of stopping the heat coming in, because it was unbearable. It would be 102 in this garage. Absolutely, utterly miserable. Now, the second thing that you really need to work on as I make my way over to it, all right, is how you're going to do the climate in your garage. Now, I have done, yes, this is an antique dehumidifier. It still works, and it's a very humid environment. So in a humid environment, this is great because I run this all the time. And it keeps it around 40% in here, very comfortable. You know, you need to, for a garage, this is 400 square feet. Okay, 400 square feet. You need to have one of these that does what they say is 1,000. Just because even with the door being done like that, it opens and closes, it lets a lot of humidity in. You just have to be overkill with things here because of the whole, you know, giant door that opens and closes. Next is the AC unit. I showed this at the opening. All right. Now, there's a lot of ways to size it. I've looked online, and this is a 450 square foot room, and according to the guides, this should be like, oh, I could get away with a 12,000 BTU, British thermal units. That's fine and dandy if this was a normal room with normal ceilings and normal doors and normal insulation. But it isn't. It's a garage. The biggest you're really going to find in this type of unit is 14,000 BTUs. And that's what this is 14,000 BTUs in a two-car garage, 450 square feet, because it's a little, there's 2 feet on either side of my door. There's an extra 4 feet in here. And it's pretty long because my whole charger fits in here with a bench. So what you need to do, though, is look at your situation, how big your room is, and how humid your area is. If you're in that southeast area, you're going to be needing 14,000 BTUs for a garage like this size, pretty much. As you don't have as brutal a winter, a summer, you can probably go down a little bit. I don't know why, but you could, and maybe get one with heat in it, because they make them with heat all built into one, so you don't have to have 2 separate units. It makes it more efficient, and it's about optimizing your space, because I kept my footprint as small as possible because of this. You know, and of course with the cooling, your mileage will vary. Now, as it comes to cooling, because this thing, I want to show a diagram what it does. It actually takes the evaporator and the condenser right here. So the condenser will have the air go over it and cool the gas freon and make it liquid. And it makes hot air, and it goes out through that pipe. And I'll talk about this. That pipe's 140 degrees, so that's a consideration. You need to make sure you can get rid of that. The other part of that is, being it's letting that air out, you have to bring in some normally temperatured air, and so it can't be the outside air. You need to bring air in from your house if it's attached. If it isn't attached, then I guess having an ingress low down so the air is a little cooler will work really well. But if you have your house, and if I was going to be staying here longer, above that door, what you could do is then put a little register up there and have it open and close. So when you do the air conditioning, you open up and let air in. I have to leave my door cracked with a little protection. I have cats that like to try to come in here and help me. So, but I had to let some of that 78-degree air come in so it doesn't try to find other air to suck in, like from the attic or whatnot. And the air from the house is not doing anything. It's not cooling this space. It's just replenishing the hot air it's blowing out. Now, the thing is with these things, there's water involved if you're in a humid climate. If you're in a humid climate, you can't let this re-evaporate the water. It will not do anything. You'll just be moving lukewarm air with lots of water in it, and the place will not feel any cooler. So you need to drain it. Now, draining it becomes a challenge, and I'm going to show this because, once again, block wall. Now, if I had a wood, this would be easy. I could go straight out the side. It'd be the same thing with the venting, and I'll get into that in a minute. So what I have to do in this case is I have to make the water go out on an angle, because you need to have an angle. It's like, just like your sewer system, it's on an angle. And what I did, since I have two things here, I tied them. Let me get a little light on there. I tied them together. This is from the dehumidifier. This one's from the air conditioning. 1/2-inch PVC, nothing special. You can use a little smaller if you want. It's fine. I mean, it's really not moving that much water. What I had on hand. You angle it down, not a super steep angle, but steep enough that it will run. Like maybe 10, 15 degrees, nothing crazy. And then you just run it down. I ran it down the wall, using little brackets. You see down there, it's even lower. Comes here. Now, it terminates here with the line, and it goes into a hose, which goes outside, and I'll show that in a minute. I used what was around. That is a little spigot connection with a piece of brass pipe on it. So I didn't have to do a little U in the line to keep the critters from going out, because that literally stops anything. It actually, like, it dripping down when it goes in there. So and it also keeps it so that it won't go stale, and it's a pretty good setup for what I had. I mean, it's just made life easier. And I ran it, and it goes underneath the door and outside, and I'll show outside in just a second. So the way I did it, this is basically tubing, 1/2-inch tubing or 5/8 tubing you get on Amazon, usually like for beers, and I just have it run down, and I run it through here to keep it so it keeps the slant, and it goes out, and it just drains away from the building. Very, very simple, very, very easy. The door crushes down on this, keeps a nice tight seal. So that's just how you just have it run away from the building. Everything is always slanted, just enough to keep the water flowing out. Okay, so now we've, in my facility here, we've now insulated it. We've picked things to help condition the air. We've gotten the water and got it running outside. and everything's on a slant out there. Now it's removing the hot air, because in this type of unit you have to remove the hot air, and I can't go through my wall because it is block, and honestly to drill through it is a nightmare. And then if I want to sell the house, there's a giant hole in the wall. So what I did, and I actually, before I even do any more, let me know what, if you get it, what you're thinking so far, this and anything else you'd want to change, because I'm really curious, because I've been trial and erroring this for about 10 years now. So just curious. Okay, so let's get back to this. So this is how I had to do it. First, this is going upward into my soffit. It goes out that way to the soffit, which is right there, so it goes straight outside like a dry vent. Now, this is an insulation around the hose. This stuff is awesome. It actually conducts no heat. It's really good stuff. It's easy to use. It's tiny. It's tight. Over here is a pusher fan. I'm going to put a picture of what it is, because this unit and all these units can't push air. They can't push air up. They can only push it sideways. So this pusher fan helps take it and accelerates it up. And actually, I just leave it running all the time. You can feel it vibrating. And it just moves air out of the garage, which is kind of neat. So it's kind of always circulating the air. That is 140 degrees. Now, if you can go straight through your wall, good for you. But you have to remember, on the other side, don't have a shrub out there or anything. This will kill anything that it hits. It's 140 degrees. If there's plastic, it will melt it. I mean, it is hot. So make sure you understand where you're going with your pipe when you're dumping it, because that's really, really hot air. Now, let me go and address those people out in the desert, out west in the dry, on the other side of the divide. That's not the Pacific Northwest. All right, so you have a different setup there. Your whole point is that you have to almost add moisture to bring the temperature down, because you have dry, 0% humidity, 110 degrees. And they have something called a swamp cooler. It's like the nickname for it. I'll show what it does here. And what you're doing is you're putting a fine mist into the air. And a fine mist is just like when it rains. It drops the temperature of the air as it adds some moisture to it. So you get up to 25, 30%, but it'll drop the temperature drastically, maybe down to 80. And 80 at 30% is very comfortable. It's a lot better than 110 and like 5. So these are good things. But that's what out that section of the country, you really need to do that, because you're not going to be able to do this setup there. It won't, there's no humidity for it to undo, and it really won't cool as well as one of those swamp coolers will. And the dehumidifier is kind of pointless. And up in the Northeast and the Midwest, the Northeast, the dehumidifier would be actually very useful. I'm not so sure about the upper Midwest. It may not be a great thing, but you could probably use the dual air conditioner heater setup. So those were the extra bonus tips there. I hopefully, let me know once again, comment below. I want to know what you do to try to keep your workspace garage kind of comfortable. Now, if you have a bigger space than a 2-car garage, and this is kind of one of those extra things, you're going to have to invest in a mini split. A mini split is basically like a home air conditioner, except it's smaller. And they have the evaporators inside on the wall and the condensers outside, just like on a regular home unit. But it's smaller, and they come in, they start, the good ones start at about 16,000, 18,000 BTU and up. If you have a 3-car garage, there's no way you're going to use one of these things to cool it. It's just not going to happen. It really isn't. It's going to be too much for it to do. Anything over like 500 square feet, you're going to have to go to mini split. But the mini split is much more efficient. And some of them use inverter technology, use a lot less power. So that would be something that if you have a bigger 3, 4, 5-car garage, good for you first. But honestly, that's going to give you your best bang for the buck once you insulate and do that, because that will really be able to elevate the cooling in your garage, or the heating, because it does both. And you actually can do remote with those. They're very, very nice and easy to use. They're a little more to install because they have to be wired up and they have to go through the wall, and they do use, most of them use 220, some use 110. But that would be, that extra little tip, for people with a larger garage, because you're going to need to really be able to move a lot of air. And the thing is, I do have fans running here too, because even with this, you do need to help circulate the air because they're not super strong blowers. They blow hard, but not that hard. There's everything, the whole dump on air conditioning, climate control, whatever you want to call it, for your garage and your workspace. So let me know what you think about it. Hey, comment below. Hope I kind of touched on everything. Hope I was helpful. If I was, hey, hit like. If you're really helpful, hit subscribe. Or if you want to see more stuff about maybe this car or maybe that car, or just fixing things in general, subscribe, hit the little bell, share it with your friends. Those kind of nice things. Because it'd be nice. Thanks. And once again, though, if you do have a cool old car, something fun to drive, yes, it's uncovered. We're gonna have excitement. Take them out, because you'll make someone's day, probably your own. And I'll catch you really soon.